Hello, everyone. How is everyone doing? Welcome to the stream. Has everyone had a great month of May so far? We've got Beverly here said hi to me. Hello from Southern Indiana and Melissa from New York. Hello, welcome. I hope everyone has had a great Memorial Day weekend and that you've had a great month of May so far. We want to be thankful for so many things here at Piedmont Trails, and we're very thankful. But I wanted to extend our prayers and thoughts today to our veterans. We want to thank you for your service, and for those who have passed on already, we want to remember you today. So thank you, guys and ladies. Thank you. All right, so say hi to me in the chat. Let me know that you're here and let me know how your journey to the past is going. I hope it's going great. Nancy just popped in, says, happy to be joining you from South Georgia. Well, welcome, Nancy. I'm so happy that you are here with us. I want you to be able to make new friends tonight, share with one another. We are going to have a Q&A segment at the end of the South Carolina discussion tonight. You can ask any question you like. Some of you, I want you to have your answers ready because you may be able to help someone tonight who's been desperately looking for some information, and you may hold that key for them. So we're going to have a Q&A segment at the end of our little discussion here about South Carolina. So don't be shy. Make new friends, and we'll all join in the conversation and enjoy the journey to the past together. We've got Marcia here Hello from Eastern Kentucky. Hello, Marcia. Glad you made it to us tonight. Glad to have you. Our main topic tonight is going to be South Carolina roads. We're going to concentrate on the period of 1750 first. I've got a little small segment for you guys dating to 1730. Okay. And then we're going to jump 20 years ahead of that to 1750. And then I'm going to go forward and we're going to end it at 1770. I know you guys have heard me say this many, many times before, but in 1770, the roads just multiplied in all of the colonies, but especially in the southern colonies. And South Carolina is no exception to that. And you'll see what I'm talking about as we get going forward with this. Okay. During 1750, there were three main wagon routes in South Carolina. And when I say wagon route, I mean migration route. Routes and roads that our ancestors would have used to enter into South Carolina from North Carolina, Virginia, and colonies in north of that. So there were three main routes. One of these, of course, is going to be the King's Highway, which is the oldest, no doubt. And it runs along the eastern side, the eastern coastline of South Carolina. The next one is going to be the Trader's Path. And this has various different names. Fall Line Road is one. Catawba Path is another name for this route. Thigpen's Trace is another name for this route. The third most popular migration route in South Carolina during this time period, 1750, is the Kiowa Trail. It also has other names all throughout history. Orangeburg Road. It also has segments that are referred to it as Augusta Road. Or it also has Buncombe Road, or the White Horse Road. Back during the colonial period, all of these roads did not have names like the way we name roads today. And I'm sure all of you are aware of this now. So most of the time during the colonial period, the roads were named for their destinations or where they traveled to. But there were three main migration routes in South Carolina during 1750. King's Highway, I said, traveled along the eastern coastline. As far as Thigpen's Trace or Catawba Path or the Trader's Path, that travels from Petersburg, Virginia, and it extends all the way past Augusta, Georgia, all the way through the heart of South Carolina, enters further west into Alabama. It goes as far as to the Mississippi River. It travels to the Mississippi River during the 17th century. not the 18th century. It's a horse trail, a horse path in the 17th century. It originates as a military route during Queen Anne's War. The Kiowa Trail is a major migration route by 1750, but its origins date to Queen Anne's War as well. And it also dates to the early trading years of South Carolina, when South Carolina was prevalent in trading with the local native tribes. The Kiowa Trail was named for the Kiowa City, or the Kiowa Town, that was exactly 96 miles from the 96th district of South Carolina. So that's why they named it 96. So it was a major trading route between a lot of the native tribes. So that's the three main roads. Now, depending on where you were on any of these three main roads, some of these roads diminished into little small, narrow paths or trails or walking paths, even as late as 1750. But of the three, we have the King's Highway, the Kiowa Trail, and the Trader's Path. Now, these names are often changed throughout the years, as I stated. And as you know, during the colonial period, we did not name roads as we do today. So out of these three, the King's Highway was the most popular in South Carolina until around 1730. King's Highway extended out from North Carolina around Little River, and then it extended southward around towards Charleston today. Originated in the late 17th century. But by the time that 1750 rolls around and you've got a lot of these families who were involved in the Great Migration years, following the Great Awakening years of the 18th century, you'll find that most of these families avoid the King's Highway. They travel western routes. And a great majority would travel the Trader's Path, traveling through Salisbury, North Carolina, and then extending south through Charlotte. And they would end up in the Camden area, around in that area, which was before 1750 was pretty much all Catawba Nation at that time, according to the boundary lines. But they would travel the most western route, even though the King's Highway was most popular in years before. It was at this time that families were beginning to settle further inland and not along the coastal waterways of South Carolina. Most of the prime property along the East Coast was already taken. So if they wanted land, they needed to go west. They needed to go further west in South Carolina. So they traveled and settled further inland, and they traveled westward. And they used trading routes and former native trails and paths from the Catawba, the Siwee tribes, the Cherokee, the Chickasaws, and many, many other native tribes. Before 1740, we have Fredericksburg, later known as Camden. We have Amelia, later known as St. Matthews. And we have the Dutch Fork area, known later as Orangeburg. And we have Kingstown, Queensboro, New Windsor, Rander, Perrysburg, Saxgotha, St. Andrews, Kingstree, and Edmundsbury. The Township Act of 1730 allowed 9 of these towns to emerge. South Carolina was slow to settle in their central Piedmont sections and their western sections. North Carolina was the same. It was difficult to create new settlements during the royal period in South Carolina, but the Townshend Act of 1730 did allow creation of 9 communities or 9 cities, small cities, 9 towns. And of these towns to emerge were Amelia, Congaree, Edisto, Fredericksburg, Kingstown, New Windsor, Perrysburg, Queensboro, and Williamsburg. Today, majority of the people, when they think of South Carolina, the first thing most of them think of is Charleston. You know, oh, I have a friend that lives in Charleston, or I'm planning a trip to Charleston. Most of the time, that's what people think of. Or they'll think of Port Royal, the history associated that, or they'll think of the state capital, Columbia. But during the mid-18th century, you had Charlestown, was your predominant trading settlements, trading city. Everything happened in Charlestown, They didn't call it Charleston then, it was Charlestown. And then, of course, you still had the famous Port Royal and things that were around that area was very popular. But the most part, you also had the unsettled midsection and western sections of the colony. South Carolina was so slow to grow during the royal period, but beginning in the 1730 decade, immigration agents would recruit families to settle inland away from the coastal region. How many of you, I want to know, how many of you have discovered that your ancestors arrived in South Carolina by way of an immigration agent prior to 1750? I want to know if you have run across that. This began in 1732, 33, and I want to know how many of you have traced your family lineage and have been able to locate that particular person who recruited your family. So they would recruit families to settle inland away from the coastal region, and to accomplish this, they needed roads to get there. So Kingstown, which was in the upper northern section of the colony, was connected to the Kings Highway from Little River, and these connecting routes followed the Waccamaw River in the most part up to 1750, surrounding Kingstown. Queensboro, which was to the west of Kingstown, was situated along the Pee River, and you only had little small routes. We could not establish any wagon roads prior to 1750 in that area. Chapel, to the south of Queensboro, was located right on the original Kiowee Trail, later known as the Orangeburg Road. This road crossed the Santee River twice in 1750 by Spooner's Ferry. That was one crossing, and the other was at Kinloch's Ferry. Many early families lived in this area just north of Hell Hole Swamp. How many of you have heard of it? Hell Hole Swamp. Okay, following the Santee west, the Santee River, continuing from Chapel, we find a wagon road right at the Russell Plantation and Mill in Amelia. This road forks south near a four-hole creek, and it ends at a Disto River. This is 1750. From Amelia, still following the Santee River, a wagon road in 1750 reaches the Congaree Fort site in Saxgotha. This is the site where the Catawba Path, or the Trader's Path, or otherwise known as Thigpen's Trace, the road from North Carolina. Okay, this is the site where the road from North Carolina intersects with the Kiowee Trail. Continuing northwest along the Santee River, crossing Rocky and Hollow Creeks, the road reaches the 96th District, so named because the Kiowee town was exactly 96 miles from that location. We're still in 1750. Going back to the Trader's Path and Kiowee intersection at Saxgotha, the other road travels southwest, crossing 3 bridges along the way until it reaches the old Chickasaw campsite, which is just north of Fort Augusta. The road continues onward south until it reaches New Windsor, and it follows along Horse Creek and Mile Hollow Creek. A great amount of this data tonight comes from a 1756 map created by Thomas Jeffries, William Bull, and John de Brom, which was actually published in London in 1757. It goes into detail about the roads that were available in South Carolina during this time period. I will post a link to that map for you guys in the comments section after the live stream. This is a very good starting map. It shows you where the wagon roads were and during this time. But it doesn't point out the smaller routes or when the road diminishes into a path or a walking trail or a horse trail. It doesn't distinguish that. Further study will allow you to see how these roads all intertwine and interconnect to one another. But as far as the Jeffries map, it's a good starting point. And I'll share that link. So now we're going to jump to 1770. All right, 20 years. And by 1770 in Kingstown, where we originally started in 1750, we find 2 wagon roads now in Kingstown. And they're traveling parallel with the Waccamaw River, okay? There are families that are living on both of these wagon roads on both sides of the river, on the northern side and the southern side. Who are these families? 1770. We found Lamb, Gunter, Jenkins, Jordan, Brown, and Knoll right near Calford Swamp. That's on the northern side. On the southern side, we found Baker living right on these roads. They are living right on these wagon roads. Baker, Thomas, Woodbury, Giles, and Dames. As you've heard us say before, after 1770, roads in the colonies grew at an alarming rate. There are roads leading everywhere throughout all of the colonies by this time period, but they specifically grow at an alarming rate in the southern colonies, okay? At Williamsburg, just north of the Santee River in South Carolina, again in 1770, we find a network of wagon roads by 1770, okay? There are 2 wagon roads that also parallel the north side and south side of the Santee River. And there are families that are living right on these roads. And who are they? On the northern side, we find Johnston, Gordon, Newman, Wright, Findall, Drake, Gilman, Kirby, McDaniel, Gullard, and Mishues. And I'm going to spell the last one. It's Mishoes. That's on the northern side of the Santee. On the southern side, we have Richbury, Keith, Thomas, Pear, and Du Bois. When we focus on the boundary lines associated with the Catawba Nation, which would have been north up here of this site that we just discussed, we locate the original route from 1750. It's the same road, and it traveled right on the southern right corner of the Catawba Nation boundary lines. And we find it again in 1770 as it crosses over 12 Mile Creek. But its reference point states that now they're referring to it as this is the road to Salisbury, or this is the Salisbury Road. And what it's saying on one particular map that we looked at is that this road travels to Salisbury, North Carolina. This is the original Thigpen's Trace. And it dates from Queen Anne's War. And families living along this road, right on the edge of the Catawba Nation in 1770, are Wyden, Galters, Culp, Gallen, Crawford, Lawson, Leonard. If we move south, more towards Camden, along the same road, we find many, many more families living in and around Camden. Traveling northwest to 96, okay, now we've left Camden, now we're traveling northwest in South Carolina to 96th District. We find many families living near the site of the old Fort Boonesboro, and they are Lawson, Long, Pigchin, Davis, Jenkins, Jarvis, and Nelson. By 1770, you had different types of roads. You had drover roads. You had stagecoach roads. You had post roads. And, you know, people would use these different routes for different reasons. If you had a herd of cattle or you had a small herd of sheep that you were driving to market, you would use a particular road in 1770 versus in 1750. That is another reason why there are so many different routes in the colonies. The other reason is the establishment of all of these new settlements that just grow overnight. There's hundreds of them, and there's a lot in South Carolina. Where to leave off at? Over the years, many of these routes would change. So a Drover road may change to a stagecoach route 10, 15 years later. Or the original stagecoach route may change completely and divert around where it went through one small settlement or one town and completely go a different route 10 or 20 years later. These routes would often change from 1770 moving on into the 19th century, depending on new towns, new settlements, boundaries, etc. So I want to also suggest the Parker map of 1773, and I'll share a link with you guys on this particular map. It was published in 1773 in London, and it really goes into detail about South Carolina and the roads that were available in 1770. Okay, so I want to share some more surnames with you real quick from our research. Let me get my paper. And I wanted to share some early surname history that we have found for the Amelia area, and that would be Golson, Thompson, Holman, Brown. These date to 1750 to 1760. Rauch, and that is Rauch, Wanamaker, and Schuler. And in the Camden area, we wanted to share Gaunt, Mathis, Anderson, Beatty. Beatty is a very popular surname in North Carolina. And you'll find a lot of these families who decided to settle in Camden originated or migrated from North Carolina. So Beatty, Berry, Black, Blair, Chapel, Clark, Coleman, Curry, Davis, Dunlap, Leonard, Murray, and Strong. The Dutch Fork area, known as Saxgotha, was settled by immigration agents between 1737 to 1757, and they would have traveled from Charlestown inland, okay, to reach that area. All right. Okay. Everybody's like, okay. All right, so now we're going to switch it over to Q&A time, question and answer time. If you have a question about anything pertaining to history or genealogy or about tonight's discussion about South Carolina roads, now's the time. Or about Piedmont Trails, about any of our projects, you can just go ahead and ask away. What do we have plans for the future? What happened to our podcast show? Where are all the articles at? Anything you want to ask, and now's the time to ask. See, Wanda was from Stanton, Virginia, with the Great Wagon Road. Jay Frost, hello from Austin, Texas. And Elizabeth says, I finally caught you live. I appreciate all you do. Oh, thank you. Thank you for all your kind words. Thank you. We recently gave a presentation to the Central Georgia Genealogy Society. So far, all of our presentation, all of the presentation commitments that we had already planned for this year, we have kept all of our commitments so far, even though we've been struggling since the hurricane, but we have kept every commitment so far. We haven't actually shared where we have been and where these presentations are being given, but we try to do that. Wanda says, yes, is the Great Wagon Road now Route 11 in Stanton? No comment. We are still researching that. Portions, I will say this, Wanda. I know everybody wants to know, where is it? Where is the Great Wagon Road, and how did that actually travel? Portions of Route 11 is the Great Wagon Road, okay? And we've been able to prove that from the original route. And I wanted to specify to everybody, the Great Wagon Road project is about proving the original route prior to 1750. That's the cutoff, 1750. Even though we're going into detail all the way past the American Revolutionary War, we're proving that. But our original goal is to prove that original route. That original route is priceless, and that's what that's how the road got started. And there's other reasons why we're trying to do that, but portions, I will say, portions of Route 11 is part of the original route of the Great Wagon Road dating back before 1750. Okay. I was trying to think if we have any presentations coming up in June. I can't think of any. So maybe June we'll be able to get caught up with a lot of things. One that says, I lived off of Route 11 on the Mary Gray Summit. Nice, very nice area. Nice area. We're hoping to share more. This is what our plan was in April or March. I've already lost track now. And I think we have it up on the website about sharing more data and material from Southern Virginia area pertaining to the Great Wagon Road and what we've been able to discover. Our goal is to share the exact, pinpoint the exact area, location of where it did actually cross into North Carolina. Yeah, now that will be an amazing share. But getting back to South Carolina, we had someone to ask us the other day, well, why didn't the Great Wagon Road travel into South Carolina? It just didn't. It ended. It ended at Salisbury, and it served its purpose. It got connected to the Trader's Path there at or Thigpen's Trace or Catawba Trail. And it was that road that led from Salisbury on into South Carolina. So the Great Wagon Road served its purpose. It was a very long road, a longer wagon road at that time than the Trader's Path. And then eventually the Trader's Path became a wagon road all the way through. Jan says, what topics are going to be discussed later this year? Well, we've had a lot of people to ask about a new segment about Virginia and the early settlers along the James River dating prior to 1740. So I'm thinking that our next live stream is going to be about that, and getting into more detail about those families. I have been able to pull up several records here at Piedmont Trails and going through that, and found quite a bit of information that we didn't share during that first segment about Virginia prior to 1740. So I think that's what our plans are for our next live stream. That's what I'm thinking that we'll do. As far as other topics, I want to go into more detail about the regulators in North Carolina because their story has not been told correctly yet. And I want to get into a lot of these North Carolina regulators, their families, and what really happened to them after the Battle of Alamance. And a lot of these families are no longer in North Carolina, and I want to share their story. We've had one to recently get in touch with me. She wasn't even aware that she had a relative that was involved with the North Carolina regulators, and she couldn't pinpoint where her family had came from. And I was able to help her to find that she was actually related to one of the North Carolina regulators, and they had to leave. They were forced to leave North Carolina. And she was finally able to pinpoint that connection and realize that her family did live in North Carolina for several years prior to moving on to Tennessee. So I want to concentrate on them a little bit more too, on the North Carolina regulators. Elizabeth says, where did the Great Wagon Road originate from and where did it end? Which states? It originated in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Many, many people will say it originated in Lancaster. We say it originated in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and it ended in Salisbury, North Carolina, right around 500 miles. Right around 500 miles. And other topics we're going to go into is the colonial indentured servants. I've got a ship list that contains, I don't know how many ships are listed. It's close to around 50 ships. I want to get their histories on the website. I want to share it with everybody because it's all good and fine if you're able to find your indentured servant ancestor. But if you can find the ship that they came on and when, and then learn more about the story, about where they originated from, then it brings the whole story together. And it allows even more details for you to look even further to find more details about the family and what really, really happened, why they ended up sailing to the colonies during that time under indentureship. And then you can find out more about how long they were indentured and why and who came with them, who sailed with them. You'll find that sometimes a lot of these who sailed as single, especially I found a couple of young ladies that sailed together, they became lifelong friends. They served not far from one another, and they ended up being lifelong friends. So they have a story. So I want to get that ship data on the website. That's another new topic I want to do. I have a lot of goals. We have a lot of goals to do. We just don't have all the time to do it. Okay, I'm just waiting to see if you've got any more questions or you've got answers. How's everybody's genealogy research going? Have you found all your answers? No? Anybody ran across a puzzle, or they finally found the missing link this month? If you did, that's great. And we've got the other topic I want to get into is to get that Mecklenburg Declaration podcast show done. We've got to get that done in the next few weeks. It's got to get done because I want to share what we found. I believe that the Mecklenburg Declaration existed. I do. Okay. All right, we're going to wrap it up. All right, you guys. So our next live stream is going to be on June the 29th. Will that be the last Sunday? Yeah, June the 29th. It's going to be on June the 29th at 7:30 p.m. on Eastern. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to travel back to Virginia prior to 1740. And we're going to share information of land, deeds, roads, and much, much more along the James River in that area and further out too a little bit. I think we're going to concentrate and go back on that. We've had a lot of requests to do that. Elizabeth says, I'm stuck on a lonely ancestor, but good otherwise. Well, I wish you the best of luck, Elizabeth. I have confidence in you. You will find that missing key. Okay, you guys, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again on June 29th. And in the meantime, enjoy your journey to the past. And God bless.